All right, let's dive right in. Major shockwaves are hitting the cryptocurrency world, and honestly, they're all centered on one of the biggest names in the game, XRP. So just think about this for a second. Imagine you could just pull $1 billion worth of a currency out of circulation. Poof, gone, locked away for years. What do you think happens to the value of what's left?
Well, you don't have to imagine it because that is exactly what Ripple, the company behind XRP, just did. And believe me, it sent a massive signal to the entire market. Okay, so what was this move really all about? Well, this wasn't just some random thing that happened. No, this was a carefully planned strategic shift, one that's designed to completely change the game for XRP.
Everyone was expecting this flood of new tokens to hit the market, right? But Ripple, they just flipped the script. They did the exact opposite. They kicked off what's being called a programmed scarcity strategy, and that is fundamentally changing the entire story around XRP's supply. It was a totally deliberate move to make their asset, well, rarer. So the big question is, how did they actually do it? Well, that brings us right to the mechanics of this supply shock.
Okay, the key to this whole thing is a financial tool called an escrow. Now, in simple terms, Ripple uses this automated escrow system to control how its own XRP holdings get released onto the market. It's all about making it predictable.
And here's how it actually works. See, every single month, the system automatically releases 1 billion XRP. But here's the twist. This time, instead of letting all of it hit the market, Ripple grabbed half of it. That's 500 million XRP and locked it right back up in a new contract. And get this, that contract won't open until late 2028. We're talking about a huge amount of supply just taken off the table for years.
And this is where basic economics kicks in. It's simple math, really. When you have less of something but demand stays the same or even goes up, well, the price naturally gets pushed upwards. It's the absolute textbook definition of a supply shock.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just Ripple making these moves. The market reacted, and reacted strongly. On-chain data, the data right from the blockchain, shows that the long-term investors, the strong hands who've been holding XRP forever, they stopped selling. In fact, they started buying more. And all that buying creates a much more solid price floor. The result? XRP actually for a moment overtook BNB to become the #3 crypto by market cap again. But look, this is about more than just short-term price pumps. Ripple's move has huge implications for how mainstream finance, the big institutions, are looking at XRP. And that institutional view is really starting to take shape. I mean, listen to this. When the former CEO of Swift, we're talking the biggest network for international bank transfers on the planet, when he says something, you pay attention. And he pointed directly to XRP as the core of Ripple's entire value proposition. So that raises the obvious question, right? If it's so great, why haven't all the banks jumped on board already? Well, it's a classic promise versus problem situation. On one side, the promise is huge: faster settlements, way lower fees, and much more transparency. But on the other side, you've got the problems: wild price swings and, frankly, a regulatory landscape that's still pretty fuzzy. And banks, they hate risk. So, the big takeaway from the institutional side seems to be this: they are watching very closely. The feeling is that adopting something like XRP could go from being just a cool tech upgrade to an absolute strategic necessity just to stay in the game. But, and it's a big but, that only happens once the rules are clear and the volatility calms down. Okay, so this all brings us to a really practical question for any investor out there. How does XRP actually stack up against the undisputed king of crypto, Bitcoin?
This really breaks it down nicely. Think of Bitcoin as digital gold, right? It's a store of value, a hedge against inflation. Its tech is super decentralized, but it's also kind of slow. Now, XRP is a totally different beast. It's built for one thing: speed and utility, specifically for global payments. It's way faster, though a bit less decentralized. And investors look at it as a high-growth, high-utility play, not a safe haven like Bitcoin.
So with those differences in mind, the analysis really points toward a specific kind of portfolio strategy. You think of Bitcoin as your core holding, the more stable anchor in your crypto portfolio. Then XRP fits in as a smaller, more speculative position, one that you're betting on to potentially disrupt that massive global payments industry. So when we put all these pieces together, what's the big picture? Are we really seeing a fundamental shift for XRP here? I think this really hits the nail on the head. What we're witnessing is XRP trying to grow up. It's moving away from being just another speculative crypto coin and positioning itself as a serious piece of financial infrastructure, something with a predictable supply model that even the folks on Wall Street can get their heads around.
And that leaves us with one final massive question. Is Ripple's bold move kicking off a whole new era? An era where this kind of program scarcity and real-world utility decides who wins the crypto race? Or is this just a temporary power play before things settle back down? That right there is the billion-dollar question.